Thanks for checking out the Indy Handshake Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Ponte, and I am here today with Scott Lost, one of the PWG Six, creator of one of the most influential indie wrestling promotions of the 2000s up until today, and now full-time comic book artist for Accidental Aliens. How are we doing today, Scott?
Got the merch on. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Thank you.
See, I did the same. See, you gotta.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, you gotta rock your shit, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did the classic PWG green actually this is our first shirt, and it was a conscious effort to have it be the PWG green.
Very nice. That dark olive green.
Yeah, loved it. I love it. I wore that shirt out, man.
So, in looking at, unless your Wikipedia is wrong, it says here you were born in Santa Cruz.
It is wrong. That is wrong.
It is wrong. Okay.
Yeah, it was because of the Lost Boys movie. So they put that, and then for a while, people had it as the Lost Hills. I forgot the dude's name. He was the XPW ring announcer guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he had like the thick Hispanic accent and stuff, and so he started ring announcing for GSCW. Anyway, and so he was like, "Hey, have you heard of the Lost Hills? It's up north a bit and whatever. Like, it'd be cool if you came out." I was like, "Yeah, man, sure, whatever." So for a while, it said the Lost Hills.
Okay.
But born and raised in San Diego.
San Diego. Okay. Not bad. Beach towns,
Yeah, man, I love it.
It's not too different, but still kind of different.
yeah, it is for sure. It's definitely different than LA or Santa Cruz.
So obviously, being a full-time comic book artist, you grew up liking comic books and stuff, but did you also grow up liking wrestling? Did you find it later on, like in your teenage years, or how did that come about?
Those two things I've found go hand in hand. Like comic book fans have a large tendency to be wrestling fans. It doesn't necessarily always go the other way, but it does for a decent chunk of it. So yeah, I grew up watching pro wrestling and reading comic books. So
nice.
Comics was actually my first choice as a career before pro wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah, and then pro wrestling kind of took over in the teen years, and that's when it was hot in the 90s, like 98 especially. It was crazy. So that's when I was doing a lot of backyard wrestling with my friends. It was TWO, Trampoline Wrestling Organization.
Very nice.
And it was all safe stuff. I actually wrote all the matches. I choreographed everything. Like I scripted everything out and stuff, and we built some stairs out of old pallets, and it was pretty safe. The most dangerous thing we did was set up some boxes. I used to work at Mervin's back in the day, and so I would steal boxes from there all the time, and we'd kind of construct the boxes, and then we'd do like diamond cutters or dives, off of the trampoline and through the boxes. Yeah. So yeah, that was as dangerous as it got.
I wonder if kids today still do, because I know backyard wrestling at the time, in the 90s was like massive, like to where they put out those best of backyard wrestling DVDs and people actually bought those and watched those.
Yeah.
So I wonder now if people are doing it, but I don't know.
I bet you they are. There's been some stuff sent to me. For the most part, I tell people don't send me crazy shit. Like, I don't like watching people get hurt. And unfortunately, a lot of those backyard videos is people getting hurt. And yeah, I've seen a couple of things that were recent, and it was like people jumping off of tables, like, I don't know, through monitors. Like, it was really weird. And like, the guy clearly cracks his ribs, and he's just like convulsing on the ground. And it's like, can you still release this? Like, are you nuts? Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I'm sure it's out there. It's just not as popular.
Yeah. Ours was like yours, trampoline, try to be very safe, do funny things. Like we'd find like whenever there was like a construction on the street, we would take like a couple of the like little light barricades and use those as like the entrance for the ring.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Stupid garbage like that, but it was fun. Hey,
we'd come out of my, we had a garage side exit into the backyard. And so that we'd use that as our ring entrance. Yeah.
So were you a WCW guy or WWF guy?
WWF.
Okay.
All the way. Yeah. Actually watching WCW when I was a kid used to give me a headache. I couldn't watch it. It was just, there was just something about it. I don't know what it was. I'd watch it and I'd be 15, 20 minutes in. I'm like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I got to turn this off. And I just go outside and play instead. There was something about it I couldn't get into. But
interesting.
Yeah.
And from there, I'm always interested in this, how you discovered independent wrestling, because, when you watch wrestling as a kid, you look at it and say, oh, like, look at these larger than life people. Wow, amazing. Where do they even come from, these magical people? And then all of a sudden,
Right.
like, you go to a high school gym sometime and you're like, what? People wrestle here? So how did you discover independent wrestling?
Yeah, I had no clue about it, to be honest with you. Like I said, I was a WWF kid growing up, and later in the 90s, like, 98 is when they hired Bischoff and all that, those other guys, or not Bischoff. What's the other guys? The guys that went from WWE to WCW.
Kevin Nash and Scott Hall?
No, the writers. The
Oh, the
writers.
writers. Oh,
You know who I'm talking. They were like major dudes. Like, it was a big deal that they went over there.
yeah, shoot. That's escaping my mind right now. It's going to bug me
Yeah,
now.
me too.
Yeah.
Oh man, people listening to this are like, "Are you guys stupid?" Anyway, yeah, look it up. So, yeah, when those guys went over, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, that's when I actually started watching it and getting into it more. But as far as indie wrestling goes, I had no clue until I met my first tag partner.
Are we talking Russo and Ferrara?
Yes, Russo, Vince Russo. There it is. Jeez.
I think I try to forget Vince Russo a lot, but
He's come up with, there's a lot of bad stuff. Man, there was some fun stuff. I loved janitor Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
oh yeah,
That was one of my favorite hacksaws. I was like, this is great. This is great. It just makes sense. But yeah, I liked some of his ideas. He definitely needed someone to like pump the brakes on him a bit, but there was some fun stuff there. But as far as indie wrestling goes, I didn't discover it until I met my first tag partner. One of my buddies brought his best friend to wrestle in the backyard, in our wrestling bed. And he brought a flyer for Ultimate University, UPW's wrestling school. And his girlfriend randomly found it. And, he wrestled with us a few times or whatever. And then he goes, "Hey man, you should think about coming up with me and watching them train sometime." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" And so we went up there, and we saw a ton of guys our size, and it was kind of like, okay, well, yeah, we have to do this now. Like, this is pretty cool. And it was actually guys like back in the, if you watched early 2000 SoCal scene, guys like Little Nate and Catastrophe, like they had these dudes that were training at UPW at the time. And yeah, so seeing them, training and stuff, just guys being our size, we're like, yeah, okay, we're going to do this for sure. And we ended up signing up within a month, and we would drive up twice a week from San Diego. So I would drive one day, Ryan would drive the other day. So.
And when you first went into it, what kind of style did you want to do? And if it was different than the style you ended up doing, how did it morph and change?
I think it's just like anything. It's very comparable to art in the sense that, like, I wanted to do a WWF style because that's where I wanted to go. I just knowing my size and stuff, like my dream was to be like the best WWE or WWF at the time light heavyweight champion. So I love Taka Michinoku was my favorite guy. Next to Brett. Brett was my all-time favorite guy, but as far as guys my size, like Taka was the shit. So that was kind of my dream. So I wanted to combine that WWF like Taka style mixed with Brett and like WCW cruiserweights. So that was like my initial goal. But when I started training, it was like a lot of Brett. Like everything I did was how Bret Hart would do it. And over time, like I started, they would train us on everything. So they're like, okay, try this. And they're like, whoa, you do that really good. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, well, Brett doesn't do that, like, and it was just kind of this weird buffer I had in my head that wouldn't allow me to do certain things. But then over time, it was like, wait, but I'm really good at doing these things and I like doing them. I should be able to do them. So I would, and it was kind of, honestly, it was a combination of like Brett and Shawn Michaels. Like what you could see with a lot of my moveset. It was like super kicks, elbow drops, and, and then sharpshooters and all that stuff. So, but over time, I just started developing more and more things. I actually used a couple of things I invented on the trampoline. And just over time, it was just because I noticed everyone was stealing from each other. And it was just like this it's just this cannibalism of indie wrestling. So, like at one point, pump handles were hot. So everyone was doing different kinds of pump handles. And then, so I was doing it and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, everyone's doing this. What what aren't people doing? So I would watch a lot of old WWE, WWF, and I would start like just watching everyone, like as opposed to it was an early on note that I had heard from someone. I think it was maybe Frankie Kazarian that said it. It was like, just stop watching the guy that you love. Start watching everyone. Oh, no, it is Noble. Actually, it was something Noble had said in an interview, and that really struck me. And it was just like, oh yeah, I should be kind of seeing what everyone's doing, not taking from this small pool. Like stop taking from the small pond and take from the, the lake, the river or whatever, and just let it flow. And so I started watching everyone. And so I was watching old school, like Boss Man, and I loved Mr. Perfect. So I'd watch Mr. Perfect. Then I'd watch even Neidhart, like, had some cool shit. And I was just like, man, that was a really cool spot. And like, that's a really great idea. And so I would do that, and I would just kind of use my creativity to be different from everyone else, as opposed to just moves. It was like, well, how are you getting into these moves? That another trigger for that was DDP. It was like, oh, every week he gets into it a new way, And so that's something that my brain like held on to. It was just like, well, why just with your finish? Why not with everything? So I would think of ways to get into everything I did differently than I did the week before. And so that just helped me creatively in the ring, just kind of be different from everyone. And then just start looking outside the box. I started watching, like, I always loved martial arts movies, and like Tony Jaa was huge at one point.
Yeah.
And so I was watching his shit, and I was like, oh man, like Ong Bak. And he did this thing where he ran up a dude and fucking just dove his elbows in the top of the guy's skull. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, how am I going to do that in the ring? And so I was like, well, if I do this, if I can step up onto their thigh and then I can shoot my other leg up next to their head, I'll be stable and they can balance me and I can pull back and bring down. And so there was just, different things like that that would kind of inspire me when I was trying to think of things in the ring just to be different. Even Batman the Animated Series, like the intro, there's the intro, the part of the intro where Batman is on the rooftop. There's these two bank robbers and they're running across the rooftop, and they look up, and then there's Batman, the silhouette, and he jumps, and it's just a shadow, and he just pounces on one guy and rolls off of him. And I'm like, oh, that's so fucking cool. Like, what can I do to emulate that somehow? And so I came up with, it was like in 2018, I think, when I came up with it. It was I call them the bat stomps. It's like where I'm in the turnbuckle and they're running at me, and I would like shoot my legs up, and I would kind of like whip myself in the air, and I would land on their chest and I would roll off. And I was like, oh, this is fucking cool, And it was a trial and error thing. The first couple of times, I remember I stepped on a dude's nuts. Like, he didn't, because it was like, I would have to explain it to them. It's like, okay, as soon as my feet touch your chest, I need you to bump as fast as possible, almost slide under me. And he didn't. He went outward. So instead of like him going straight under where I could land on him, he went out. So instead of landing on his chest, I landed on his nuts. And so the first time I did it, I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off. And then the next couple of times it was like, it was like, okay, it's getting better. And then after that, it was clean. So I do it pretty much every match after that.
See, I love stuff like that where you take like out of the box ideas and incorporate them into wrestling. Like when I talked to Vinny Massaro on this podcast, he mentioned he got a lot of his ideas for innovating moves or whatever from Tekken. He was like, I would watch them do moves in like Tekken or other fighting games, and I'd be like, how can I do that in a ring? Like, that'd be really interesting to do. So now that you're getting into like creating different moves and doing all that stuff, what was the learning curve as far as psychology in the ring, though? When do you do these moves? How, like, what's the right time? What's the inappropriate time, etc.? Like, how was that learning curve for you?
It's pretty easy. UPW, that's one of the first things they teach you. Besides, it's like basic bumping. They'll teach you that, and then it was psychology. Like, psychology was huge. It was a WWE farm school, so you had to know psychology. But it was like, it's like the bare bone. It's the basics of psychology. It's like they teach you how matches are put together and you get an idea. It's almost like writing a movie. Like, you have the opening sequence, and you get to know the characters, and then you get into it. The hero's down, they're fighting out of this, and then they overcome it at the end. There's a huge battle, and eventually the hero wins, but wrestling case, maybe the villain wins or whatever. So yeah, there was just a way to break down matches, that they taught you a formula, and then it's all on your acumen for the subject, right? So for like wrestling, like my pool is pretty big, compared to not to everyone or anything like that, but like than just the average guy. Like I could think more out of the box. I can understand things a little bit better. And I sound like an asshole, but but it's
you had a successful career and you started an amazing promotion. So I mean, it's not, you obviously had some natural ability in the subject.
Right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know I sound like an asshole. But in wrestling, I had an aptitude for it. I just understood it. And so after a while, you can start messing with the psychology of things. Like you can start changing it up. Like Bryan Danielson, way bigger pool than me. Like he understood it on a completely other level. Whereas I was on one level and he was like 2 levels higher than it. And so to know someone like that and go, man, I thought I knew what I was doing in here, and like he knew even more. So, but yeah, after a while, you go, okay, this is how they show you it set up, A to Z, but you can move this around and this around. It's like some movies, they throw you're right in the middle of the action. You don't get to know the characters first. Sometimes you just know, you're like, oh shit, there's a gunfight right now, and like, then eventually through the story, you get it all figured out. It's all sorted by the end. I figured at one point, it's like, I can mess with the puzzle a little bit. I can change it up. And so I started just doing crazier shit in my matches. To the point where, like, my last year and a half, I knew I was quitting. I knew I was going to be done. So I wanted to cut out all the stuff that I just didn't want to do anymore. Like, as opposed to trying to have the best match on the card, I just wanted to have fun. So I was like, all right, no more hold to hold. I'm just not doing it. I've done it for 8.5 years. I'm cool. Like, we don't have to do that shit anymore. So every match started with a jump start. And people just, after a while, people were like, jump start? And I'm all, yeah. And it just became a thing. Like that's just how my matches start. It's like, start it hot. Like, I want the matches hot. I want this going a mile a minute, like right out the gate, and I don't want to do a 20-minute classic that the indie fans are going to go crazy over for a couple of months or whatever, a couple of years. It's like, I want to get in, I want to get out. I want to have fun. I want to, I want to have, a car chase in here. I want to have, nonstop. I want to have a gunfight in here. I don't want to have like I said, a classic, indie classic, but they're fun to watch. So, and then people just started getting more into my matches, I started reading stuff like towards the end, I was just like, oh, I wonder what they think, of all of this or whatever. And then, so I just read reviews, and people are like, oh, I didn't really like his stuff before, but like, yeah, I'm starting to dig his stuff. And I'm like, oh, I think maybe I should have just been doing this the whole time, just doing whatever I want, as opposed to trying to have the best match.
Yeah. I think when it comes to the idea of playing with the psychology of it, I think that's where a lot of matches that try a lot of false finishes, I think sometimes they overthink that part, because they're doing a lot of false finishes, but like in my brain, they're not really false finishes. And the reason is because we're conditioned over years of watching wrestling, like subconsciously, even if you're not thinking about it, your brain knows what's coming next. It's like a feeling, And it's only when you really master that whole thing and then you play with it to the point where like you literally go, oh, wow, I did not see that coming at all, because your brain doesn't even think that it's possibly going to happen next. And that's like a true false finish. That's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. But it's really hard to do that. It's a little tough. But
there's a rhythm to matches, and whether you feel it or not, it's basically what you're describing. You're feeling the rhythm of it. You're like, no, the match isn't over right here. And you have guys like, Danielson or whoever, that understand it, and they can do falsies where you're like, oh shit, I thought that was the finish, and so it's a real difficult thing. And I would watch those matches as someone coming up that wanted to do a WWE style, like a TV friendly style mixed with indie. To watch the overly indie matches was kind of painful. I'm like, oh, that should have been the finish. Like, you'll see some fucking Canadian Destroyer, like second finish falsy of the match. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening? Like, can we get a build up to this? And so there would be stuff like that. I'm like, that clearly, and then you get to the finish and it's just like a roll up and it's just like, it's garbage. This is garbage. Like,
yeah, my only, like, I don't know if you've been, how, I know this is an indie wrestling podcast, but I don't know if you've been watching AEW at all. And they have a lot of criticisms about the Canadian Destroyers and stuff like that. They do too many of them and everything. My only real problem is, like, if you know something's a big finish in an upcoming match, or if you maybe don't use that move in your regular match in the beginning, in the middle of the match. Like, if something's a big move, just don't do it earlier. And that might not even be like the sense of either they're not talking to each other.
Yeah.
So they don't know, or they don't care, which is worse.
Who's doing it? Who's doing the Canadian Destroyer? I seen it on the Bucks. I seen the Bucks take it a couple of times. Is it the?
So the Jurassic Express guys do the Canadian Destroyer. The Lucha brothers do the Canadian Destroyer. Dustin Rhodes does a Canadian Destroyer now.
What?
So
why is everyone doing this move?
So like, everyone's doing Canadian Destroyers now, and
Jesus Christ,
yeah,
it's like, oh man, back in my day when I was in the Indies, it was like one dude's move, and like maybe two, and that's weird, man. Like that's the thing about the Indies that I had a tough time with was when like there would be guys that would steal my shit. Like they blatantly tell me like, look, like I took this from you or whatever. And like, they kind of know I do it here. And I'm just like, all right. Like, Cheech and Cloudy, we wrestled them over at Chikara. And Cheech was the one that said he's the one that told me that. He was cool about it. He was cool about it. But there has been other incidences where it wasn't cool. But he told me, it was cool. He helped me plan the spot to where I got over on him with my moves. So that was kind of fun. But there would be guys that would do my stuff like on the same card, and they'd be on the undercard, and I would be up or higher up on the card. And I'm like, they should do my finish, like it's like stuff like that. It's wild. It's like, come on, guys, like you guys got to talk about this. You can't just do like I used to use it was called the Key Crusher. I thought of it on a trampoline. I just called it a fisherman driver. And once I found out it was Loki's finisher, I stopped using it, and I definitely wouldn't use it on a card that he was on. So, but sometimes that would happen. Like guys would do certain things that I would do. And I'm just like, this is weird, guys. Like, it's not entertaining. Like, it's not, unfortunately, I haven't been watching AEW. A lot of my buddies are on there, and I'm glad they're doing well. It's just, one, I don't have cable. I don't get that channel. I just do like Netflix, Hulu, all that other stuff. And it's just, I don't watch wrestling as much. I'll catch a couple of my friends' matches, like, online or something like that. But beyond that, just not really.
Did that happen immediately after you stopped wrestling, or did it kind of like gradually?
As soon as I stopped while I was still wrestling. Like it just wasn't entertaining anymore because it was all the same stuff. It's like, it's like, I don't know, man, just like fucking seeing the Matrix. Like you're just like, I get it. I understand it. Like you look at it differently than from when you were a fan. And there's certain guys that you can watch and you go like, oh, I didn't see that coming, but for the most part, it's all like, I just knew what was happening and it just wasn't as entertaining anymore. And then it became me breaking down the matches. Like I'd always just break down matches, and even in just trying to watch and enjoy them, it would still happen. And just over time also, like after seeing a bunch of my friends get on TV, and like a lot of time had passed since then. I think I was already out of the business 5 years before Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens got on TV, Claudio. I don't know his WWE name. But yeah, I know a lot of the guys PWG names or indie names. Like it's hard for me to switch them over. But it was already like, I think 5 years before those guys got on TV, and like you kind of see more opportunities for indie guys coming around. And so I'd watch a little bit of it, but I would get kind of bummed out because there was no opportunities really when I was working. It was a down point in wrestling. Like WCW was gone. TNA was barely a thing. And there wasn't much, like you couldn't make money in wrestling really, unless you were like a top guy.
Well, at that time, and I talked about this with Watts because he was on Tough Enough around that time, and we were saying, you know, if you wanted to be in the WWE at that time, basically you had a better chance if you played college football, or if you played, you know, another sport in college, so that they can just like you were just a piece of clay that they can just you do this now. This is what we want you to do.
Right. Yeah. And for the most part, it didn't work with a lot of those guys. Like,
nope.
That was like the WCW power plant. You would just get these cookie cutter guys, these farm fed guys. You're just like, yeah, they're in great shape. They're massive. They're giants, but they don't really know what they're doing in there. They're doing the cookie cutter A to Z formula that you're taught, you know, for psychology. It's like, well, this is when you do this. This is when you do this. This is when you do this. They didn't understand why they were doing it then. They didn't really grasp it. And that's, for the most part, that's what happens when you don't grow up as a wrestling fan. You don't understand the psychology, the storytelling, as much as if you were brought up through the indies. You know, like you learn a lot of bad habits on the indies, but you learn a lot of good habits too. You learn a lot of different tricks that they're not going to teach you in a farm school, because they're teaching you to be like everyone else in WCW or WWE, whatever the case is. On the indies, you're learning how to establish yourself away from everyone else on the card. How do you make yourself different or better than everyone else on the card? Well, you do different shit. You think of different things. If you're in a farm school, you're being taught these things, and that's how you do it. So and then you watch those guys like Jindrak and O'Hare. You watch them, you know, against other guys like, you know, Guerrero, Malenko, whoever, that have been everywhere. And you go, oh yeah, you could just see the difference. You know, it's crystal clear.
You're doing indie wrestling, you're training, everything's going good. You're learning psychology. How does PWG come about? What is the goal in mind at the time? What do you decide? Like, what is your idea, your impression of what you guys were going for in the beginning?
We honestly wanted more places to work. Stuff was drying up. You know, you would have these pop-up feds. We had this place, the marketplace, the Anaheim marketplace, where a lot of these little feds would pop up at, and they would rent out the space in the ring from the lucha promoter, Martin. And, you know, he did WPW every Sunday. You know, it was his lucha fed, but he would rent it out to random indie people, you know, throughout the week, or, you know, Saturdays, Friday, Saturdays, whatever. And so we would work those shows, but then even those would start dying off, and we just needed more places to work. I had an idea, maybe like 6 months prior to PWG, maybe a year prior to PWG, of starting my own fed. But it was just like, the concept would not have worked, but it was essentially, hey, all my wrestling buddies, hey, you guys want to work this show? We all get paid the exact same amount. Doesn't matter where you're on the card. We all just get paid the exact same amount. All right, we'll charge, you know, $5-10 for tickets. We'll do all that. We'll pay the ring rental, space rental, whatever that costs. We can get a deal. I know the promoter or the owner or whatever. And then we'll split the rest amongst the boys. So whatever we make, we all make it. Right. So that was my idea. Never came about. It was just too problematic. And after a while I was like, oh, I don't want to be a promoter. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in charge of all this stuff. And then, 6 months to a year later, you know, we started talking about doing it again. And so, you know, eventually we just started putting it together, and, you know, some of the guys knew big guys, you know, it's like, oh, we got AJ on our first show, and it's just like, oh shit, that's kind of wild. And, you know, Samoa Joe was one of my trainers. I think he got hurt or something. I can't remember if he could, I don't think he could do the first show. I think he got hurt. But it was supposed to be AJ and Joe, I think. Then it became AJ and Frankie. And then Frankie was another guy that he was already established in the business, but he was a workhorse. So he was always at training when I was training, you know. initially training. So I knew Frankie too. And so anyway, yeah, we put it together just as another place to work.
Yeah, Frankie, I saw him multiple times in Northern California. He was going up and down like all the time,
Oh yeah.
regularly. That guy, that was one of my first, like, one of the first indie guys I marked for hard was Frankie Kazarian. It was like him and Daniels were like the two where I was like, oh, these guys, man, the best.
Yeah. They were great. I love those guys, and the nicest guys too.
Oh yeah.
To have Frankie and Daniels around all the time, while I was training, Frankie would be training sometimes. He'd help sometimes. Chris Daniels, sometimes he would train us or whatever, but he was in UPW, so he'd be around and stuff like that. Even after like the Galaxy shows, he would, pull me aside and say, hey, look, work on this. He goes, this is good. Work on this. And so just to have someone of those guys' caliber around all the time was really helpful.
What was Samoa Joe like as a trainer?
Just like exactly like he seems he would be. He was tough. He was I liked his style of training, and his style of training is actually how when I would train people, it was the same style. Like it was a style I appreciated. He was very firm. He would tell you when something was bad. He goes, that's not good. So that's not good. Try it again. Try it like this, and then when he goes, that's good. And like, I like positive reinforcement myself, but I do need to know when something's bad, especially when something comes easy to me. Like pro wrestling came relatively easy to me. So when something was bad, I needed to know it was bad because I was like, it felt good. He goes, no, it wasn't good because of this reason. And after that, that's when I started taping everything. I would tape everything because I would say, I need to see what he's talking. Like I'm a visual learner. I need to see what I'm doing. And then so, I'd record everything. And so I'd see what he was talking about or whoever. But he's really super solid teacher. He's really cool to have around.
And how did you notice from the time you guys started PWG towards the time you left, how did the indie scene change? What did you notice were the biggest differences?
When I first started, fly-ins were like a huge thing. Like everyone in the SoCal scene was champing at the bit to get a fly-in. It's just like, okay, who gets to wrestle him? And PWG once that like PWG made fly-ins a regular thing. So then after that, I was just like, it was always cool to wrestle fly-ins, but it just wasn't as big of a deal. So I would say that was the biggest difference. And then there was more of a buzz around the indies when PWG came along, as opposed to before, where it was like, felt like everything was dying. It was dying off, even, UPW like went away very early on, like right after I stopped training. I think it was around for maybe a year or two, and then it was gone. So yeah, just a lot of stuff dying at the end, in the beginning for me. It's about 2000, 2005. And then after that, it was, everything was cool.
And when you were, towards the end, when you said you were like, I'm just going to have fun in the ring, I'm just going to do this. When you encountered younger workers, guys who were just starting out, how did they compare to younger workers when you were young and you were starting out? What did you think about like the attitude, maybe the way they saw wrestling? What was different between that?
Honestly, it's about the same. It's like a case by case thing. Like some people just pick it up really quickly. Like the Bucks, they're just natural. And then there's other guys that was just like, you're not as good at this. You need to work harder or whatever. And then, either those people would, take the turn, you would see them get way better, or they would just drop off. So it is more or less the same. And I'd imagine it's still like that to this day. It's like, just like anything, you know what I mean? You have good people and you have bad people at things. Like there's trial and error. Sometimes you get better. Sometimes you get worse. Sometimes you don't improve. So yeah, it's more or less the same.
And when you first started out, how did you feel about, part of wrestling is, how you are in the ring, how you are on the mic, all that stuff. But also a big part of it is the connections you make and the people you meet. So how did you go about navigating, the locker room etiquette, how you talk to certain people, if there's veterans around, any of that kind of weird stuff? Like, how was that learning curve for you, and what was it like?
I hated that stuff, man. That stuff's the worst. Like, that's a part of wrestling that, not the whole respecting your vet. Oh, you should always respect your vets and stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff's bullshit. Like, it's all garbage. It's like you have to go around and shake everyone's hand. You have to give them the light handshake. The harder your handshake, the harder you work, the stiffer you are in the ring, like that type of shit.
Thus the name of the podcast.
Yeah. Should have named it the Limp Fish Podcast. Yeah, no. After a while, I just started shaking people's hand. I'm like, oh, you work? I don't know, maybe. We'll see when we get in the ring how I'm working. But yeah, no, I hated that stuff, and I don't know. There was a couple incidences where, I didn't shake someone's hand, or they didn't think I gave them enough attention or whatever, and like I was like, this is the stupidest shit in the world. Like, I wish you could just walk in the room and say, hey, everyone, I'm happy to see everyone. Hey, like that would be so much better, but you got to walk up you got to do this whole thing, and even when you don't want to do it, like you clearly don't want to do it, but you're doing it because it's part of the rules. It doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can see guys that would go do it and they don't really want to do it. They're just doing it because they have to do it. And it's just like, well, I don't want that handshake, and it's like, and it's not on them because it's the rule, right? So it's just the stupidest shit ever. And I wish that stuff, I mean, I don't care. I'm not in it anymore, but for the guys that are in it or are going to be in it, like for you, I wish that shit would go away because it's dumb. So
it's kind of a, we live in a more of a smarky culture as far as wrestling, especially now. Everyone kind of knows the ins and outs and knows all the stuff.
Right.
But a lot of that was starting kind of when PWG was getting started. I felt like a lot of this, you guys got a lot of the smarter fans, quote unquote, going there. So when you guys are planning and booking and promoting, at what point, like, how do you balance catering to, anyone who wants to show up, or catering to the smart mark fan base? Like, how do you think about that at all, or do you just do whatever?
I don't think so. I don't think we really thought about that, because PWG was basically started by the guys that were popular in the scene,
Mm-hmm.
The PWG Six, like, we're all pretty popular in the scene. So everyone that was going to come to the show liked our matches already. So
Okay.
we really didn't have to change anything. And then, us being wrestlers, we go, oh, that guy's good. That guy's good. Oh, we should bring that guy in. And Super Dragon didn't listen to me at first, but for years I wanted Chuck Taylor and Ricochet. I wanted those guys forever. And I was like, these guys are really good. Like, we should really get these guys. And for years we never got them. And then eventually we started bringing them in, and I was just like, I fucking told you. I told you these guys are good, But basically we just bring in guys that, we thought were good workers.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew we would have solid cards, at that point. We had been wrestling long enough to we knew who good workers were and what fans were into. So we kind of didn't need to cater because it was already there. There was one thing we did think about, but it wasn't based on the fans. It was just like being different from everyone else. We did, like, if you guys watched the first maybe the first year or two, there was a lot of comedy, like a lot of comedy sketches and extras on the DVDs, because we liked that stuff, and we're like, we'll probably like this stuff too, but if not, we'll get a laugh, out of it. So
yeah, I told when I did the episode with Talwar, I told him, I was like, I in a lot of his old skits, especially like the Chipotle and all that stuff, I see a lot of what the Young Bucks do in BTE and all that stuff. So I'm kind of like, I'm not saying it's not, obviously they're not ripping it off, but I see there's a huge influence in the comedy from PWG into the stuff they would do later.
Yeah. They're not, they're not stealing it because they were part of it as well. When they were around, they weren't around in the very beginning, but they were around for a lot of the antics and stuff like that. So, when they were working, it was like they were still making names for themselves. So they weren't necessarily doing the comedy, and we were all established guys. So we can, we could dick around and stuff like that, but because we were already established, so it didn't really matter. So to see them do it now, it's just like, yeah, that's the obvious progression of things. It's like they're the best now.
Did any old school workers that you knew, or maybe not just more old school sensibilityed workers, I would say, did they ever say anything about the comedic aspect of PWG and be like, I'm not too into that, man. Like, what's going on?
Not really. I would say the only old school mentality guy that we had was Adam Pierce, and he was cool. He was cool with it. You know, he's a certain amount of dicking around he was cool with. But he was never vocal about it. He was always really cool to me. We always got along. So
Scrap Iron.
Yeah. Scrap Iron Adam Pierce. Shout out. He was always cool with stuff. You know, he took himself seriously, but I don't think he put that on everyone around him. And then just, especially when the entire atmosphere is like that, kind of a loose atmosphere, I think people had a tendency to go with the flow, not take themselves overly serious.
Yeah, we had a lot of double dipping as far as workers for between SoCal and Northern California, you know, because the drive is easy. And but we saw a lot of the same guys when I worked for APW. That's when American Dragon won the King of Indies. And so guys like Scrap Iron, Adam Pierce, you know, I saw him over here. I saw Frankie, all these guys. Did you ever make your way NorCal, or did you ever think about it? Or
Yeah, we went up there a couple of times. I can't remember how many times, but we did a couple of the APW garage shows.
Okay.
Garage Wars, something
Gym
like that.
Wars.
Gym Wars, there we go.
Yeah.
So we did a couple of those. Yeah, they're all right. It's all right. You know, not too terrible of a drive, and yeah, it's cool enough.
When you're getting workers that come in, was it ever, I don't know. I want to say the word intimidating for the people coming in, but I wonder what it was like for guys coming in when you guys obviously are like a friend group. You guys are your own like clique of people who are running this promotion. And now you bring in a fly-in, you know, it's kind of like, oh, I'm joining this already like created atmosphere.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if there was ever any clashes of personality or anything like that, where you're kind of like, or maybe someone just fit right in immediately. Like you almost thought, wow, this guy could have been here since the beginning.
Yeah. There's both of those things have happened. So there's Sami Zayn, El Generico, Kevin Steen, Kevin Owens. Those guys felt like they were always there. As soon as we started booking them, we're like, these guys are our friends. You're our friends now. You know what I mean? Like and every time they would come into town, they'd always come into town early and they would leave late. And it was just, we liked hanging out with them. You know, they were just good dudes and they felt like us, you know, and just like felt like we knew them forever. There were a couple of guys that were, you know, kind of standoffish and kind of what you expect, you know, like low key or whatever. It's just like, but he's very rigid and that's his personality. So we're a bunch of goofballs. So we're obviously not going to, you know, be hanging out or whatever. So, but you know, you get those, like a lot of the guys that you think their personalities one way in the ring, it's more than likely that's probably how they are. So, but you know, most of us were pretty easygoing people. So we got along for the most part.
Were there any guys that, you know, came and went and you thought, man, that guy was just amazing. And I can't believe that he never got signed. I can't believe like any of this happened. Like for me, one guy, and I heard, some people started mentioning him on Twitter again the other day because not a lot of people mention his name that much anymore. To me, I loved Bobby Quance. I thought Bobby Quance was like the next big thing. Like he was going to be it.
I love Bobby Quance. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. So I don't know. Were there any guys that stuck out in your mind as like they came and went from the business and you were like, man, I thought for sure this dude was good enough and was definitely going to be, you know, in the WWE or whatever?
I thought, I mean, I guess they both made it. Like Frankie Kazarian, like I thought he's going to make it to the WWE. He had the drive. He was constantly training. You know, like I was saying, he was already established when I was training and he was always at training. It's like, this guy works way too hard. He looks too good. He's clean in the ring. There's no way this guy's not getting signed. And then he got there and I don't think he really enjoyed it. You know, like he didn't like how things were done over there, or how they treated him. You know, and so he wasn't there very long. And like, for me, I was like, oh, that's super duper shitty. You know, it's just like, this guy worked so hard to get here. And I don't think he enjoyed his time here. Chris Daniels, you know, it's just like, how did he not get like a legit shot, at being there. He's one of the best guys on the indies ever, and like he's like a legend. So Colt Cabana was a big one. It was like, this guy is so charismatic and just so good in the ring, and he's a guy that can mess with the formula, and he just gets it, just understands it. So those are the big ones. Those are the ones that I thought for sure. It's just like, oh, these guys are making it for sure. Sami Zayn. I always say this in interviews, but I always knew he was going to make it because, like, in our locker room, so a PWG locker room is a relatively special locker room. So in a room full of special people, he was the most special. Like, everyone looked at him, like, to see what he was doing. He was a great person and just full of energy and all of that stuff. So like him, it was like a no-brainer. He was going to make it. Kevin was always a good worker, but it was just like, to be in the WWE, you wouldn't think so,
Yeah.
For years, it was like you had to have, abs on abs on abs to get in there and be gassed out of the gills and all that stuff. So Kevin was a freaking shocker, like, not undeserved, not to say that. Like, he's an amazing worker, but it's just
and
like,
to do so well. Like,
yeah,
world championships, exactly. Like, huge.
Yeah, it's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So, but and I'm glad that the WWE returned to that era of going, like, you don't have to all look the fucking same. You know what I mean? Like, the wrestling I grew up with is like, yeah, like Big Boss Man was like a great wrestler. Yokozuna, you have bigger dudes, just guys of all different sizes that were like, it's like, oh, that Earthquake, not saying Kevin's as big as Earthquake. Kevin, if you see this, that's not what I'm saying. But
Hulk Hogan loved working with Earthquake, and he loved working with Boss Man because they bumped and made him look like a superstar.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
And they're seriously, like, if you guys get a chance, go back, watch some Boss Man matches. He had some killer spots. There's a couple of spots I just blatantly stole from him. I'm just like, no one watches this. Like, who's watching Boss Man matches? So I would tweak the spots, but for, like, sometimes I would just, like, I don't need to tweak it because he's not working anymore. He's not using this spot. So, yeah, he would just move so well for such a big guy. But yeah, I'm glad that WWE kind of like opened up their eyes. It's like, dude, you can have any size worker and have them be effective if they're good at what they're doing. So it's great to see, Sammy. So weird calling him that. Sami Zayn and Kevin make it. Just super cool. Super cool.
And how has the transition been to doing comic books now? I mean, you awesome. Finished wrestling. I'm sure your back is thanking you at this point.
Surprisingly, my back is I got lucky, man. Like, I escaped wrestling with no back injuries. I have 0 back injuries. Unfortunately, my right knee, my left ankle, and concussions. So those are what I got from wrestling. My right knee is destroyed. My left ankle is destroyed. And, just too many concussions, it's just like CTE is a real thing. It's like, oh, my memory kind of sucks. I'm good. Like, I'm not a complete moron or anything, but it was just like, oh yeah, Vince Russo. I couldn't remember his name. He was one of the most popular writers forever. And I just couldn't think of it. It was gone until you had said it, So it's stuff like that. It's like, God, I used to know more words for this. How come I can only think this one version of this word, So it's stuff like that. But the transition to comics has been very easy. It's like I mentioned earlier, wrestling was my second love. Comics was always my first love. When I was a kid, I used to train myself to be a comic book artist. I would, like, in the summer, I wouldn't allow myself to go outside until I completed 1 page of art. Like, I was training myself to become a comic book artist at a young age.
Wow.
And, the teens hit, wrestling was insane. And so I ditched comics to do wrestling, and, teenager too, you kind of lose focus, and girls and all that. So, I changed it up for 10 years. And then towards the end of it, I was like, I want to do comics again. I miss comics. And, I'd still read them, from time to time, but I still really started to want to get back into that as my career was winding down. And that year and a half at the end where I was just like, I'm just going to do what I want to do. That was because I had started drawing again. And I was just like, I just want to draw and I just want to do that. And I want to hang out with my friends in San Diego. And it's like wrestling stopped becoming fun. It was a job. Like my friends were like, hey, what are you doing this week? I'm like, I got to go to work. I got to work up in LA or whatever. So once wrestling stopped becoming fun and like I'd said previously, financially wrestling was not good. Like there was no money in wrestling, and so it's just like, okay, I can't justify doing this for another 5 or 10 years. For one, I'm not having fun anymore, and two, there's no pay, and so I'm just getting more hurt and I'm getting older and this and that. So, and I had a deadline. The deadline was 30. It was like, if I wasn't making a living off of wrestling, and that was pretty much the deadline. It was just like, if I wasn't making a living off of it, I wasn't going to do it anymore, regardless of how much fun I was having. And, but I wasn't having fun until that year and a half mark. And then it's when I stopped caring so much about what everyone else thought and just what I thought. And then I started having fun again. That was the messed up part, was the last, so it's about 6 months of me not giving a fuck and just doing whatever I wanted. And then which kind of started making it fun again. So the whole last year, I was like on this tear, and I was like, oh, this is great. Things are great. Like I'm kind of getting a little bit of a push, and so I was like, this is pretty cool, and like I had my finish and I had kind of my move set locked in finally. And, I had this great balance, but then, it was just time. It was time. And there was a huge relief once that final bell rang. There's just a huge relief, just a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. And I got to get back to comics and doing something that I've loved. And I think that's one thing that's helped keep me away from the ring as well. Is like, I've had something else to fall back on. A lot of guys don't leave wrestling because they don't know what else to do afterwards. They don't have other things that they could do. It's like, for me, it's always been comics. So it was just, I took a 10-year diversion. It was a good diversion. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So where I got my writer. I got my writer out of wrestling. Mr. Excitement is my comic book writer. So, and he was someone I, met obviously early on in my wrestling career. I think like 2003 or something like that, 2002 maybe, at Rev Pro. We just had like a ton in common, comics, Bruce Lee, wrestling. Like, well, wrestling was a little different. He liked Japanese wrestling. I liked WWE stuff, but wrestling's wrestling. So just someone I had a ton in common with, and just like a great guy. And, a lot of those Rev Pro guys, like those are the guys that I keep up with, to this day. Top Gun, those guys are some of my closest friends in wrestling still. Scorpio Sky, still talk to him pretty regularly. So
that's a guy who I'm happy to see. We spoke about people get quote unquote making it, getting signed or whatever. That's a guy I was stoked to see on TV, was Scorpio Sky.
Yep, absolutely.
Not one, because he's super hardworking. Two, he's a really nice guy. I met him a couple times. Very nice guy.
Pretty much.
And three, he's also just super, super talented.
Yeah, so, he's great. He's great. There was some guys in SoCal that I thought for sure were going to make it. Not for sure, but it's like, these guys have the highest ceiling to make it. I thought me, Bosch, and Sky. Like I thought out of the SoCal guys, like we were the ones that could go somewhere, do something. And just, unfortunately it didn't happen for me and Bosch, and Bosch tapped out a little bit earlier than I did. And, but it's great for Sky. Like he kept with it. It was, AEW didn't come around. Like, when did they start? Like 3 years ago?
Yeah. Well, they announced it at the beginning of 2019.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that would have been 8 more years of me working the indies, and it's just like,
that's a long time.
It sounds awful.
Yeah.
Like 8 more years of not making money before, making money. Like that doesn't, I'm glad I've been drawn. And there's been a lot of fans and friends asking me to come back. It's like, oh, you should come back. Like you'd probably do really well right now. And I'm just like, it's mentally, I'm not there. Like it's not something I'm thinking about like at all. It's like, the money's good now. but it's like, unfortunately I'm a victim of the time. It was just, I was working when it wasn't a good time to be working,
Yeah.
So it is what it is. It's fine.
Yeah. It was a really opposite idea in wrestling. It was, you don't want to be too indie. You don't want to be too indie in the business, but it's like, so you don't want to be experienced. Is that what you mean?
And it sucks too, because like a lot of the TV style right now is my style. It's like, oh, it's a combination of indie and WWE stuff. Like that's the style I always worked, and it was just finding the balance for that. And that's what's on WWE programming right now. And I think that's part of the reason too, like why I wouldn't watch wrestling. Cause it's just kind of bummed me out. It's just like, oh, they're doing on TV what I was doing for a long time. And like, this is bad timing,
Yeah.
So, but well, I'm glad my friends that hung in there it's like, thank goodness it paid off for somebody, like I love, like you were saying, it's like, I love seeing Sky on TV. It's great.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff you did was pretty tailor made for television. A lot of the flourishes you had in like the way you would do an elbow drop and kick the leg out, or just like, or the, like the spear into the Superman spear into the corner, stuff like that, where like you were really good at accentuating your other body parts that weren't necessarily part of the move to make that move look that much more impactful. So I don't know.
Yeah, man. It's just that the little things that counted, that was something I thought about early on. You just gotta think about wrestling in a different way. Like the guy that really made me think outside of the box as far as the ring goes was Fit Finlay. Fit Finlay, he was a WWE agent after his WCW stint, right after WWE bought him and all that stuff. And then he had a comeback where he started wrestling again in WWE for the first time for the WWE. But he was using, like, I remember someone tried to do a baseball slide and he lifted up the ring skirt and the guy slid into the ring skirt and he just started beating the shit out of him. I was like, this is amazing. Like who does that, And he would just do certain things like that. And I'm like, oh my God, like how else can you use the ring? And so I started thinking of other things to do, like I started doing a swinging pole drop kick. It was kind of like a 619, but like we'd be running on the outside and I would just kind of run and grab the post and swing through and drop kick them like a baseball slide drop kick. And that was just, it was because of Fit Finlay and the way he was using the ring differently. And then the end, like the last couple of years, I started doing this tie clench, like chest. So I would slide the guys out on the ring apron and I'd get them in a tie clench and I'd lift them up and I would pull them down chest first onto the ring apron. And it looked devastating. And that was based off of just that little thing that Fit Finlay did. It was just like, all right, well, I got to start using the ring differently now. It's like, oh, who uses the ring apron? Not many people, and so you just start doing these other things. And it's just, it can be one thing, you can see one thing and it can open your mind up to completely different ideas. So it's just being open to it.
As a, an artist, how many or do any of the boys reach out to you like, hey man, I'd really like to put out a new t-shirt design. It'd be cool is if someone could draw that for me.
And not many, thank goodness. Like, I do commission work. So there has been a couple of guys that have commissioned me to do gear design. Sky's gear design, Scorpio Sky's gear design right now. I designed that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'll do stuff for him. I've done stuff for some other local guys or whatever. They'll hit me up. They know I draw or whatever. And so, so it's been mostly that. And I also do freelance work for Pro Wrestling Loot. It's like a Loot Crate type company, but it's all wrestling related. So I do work for them. I do trading cards. I do toy designs and stuff like that, t-shirt designs. So so I'm still in the wrestling world in that sense where I'm doing art for them.
I was going to ask, I don't know if it's, too soon still after the business, but any ideas for a wrestling themed comic?
Dude, I had this comic I did of Top Gun. Actually, I did a couple of pages and it was going to be called The Guerrilla Six. And this was going to be, I had this idea, I think when I was still working. So I've not done one thing with it, but it would kind of be fun. It was essentially going to be kind of like a Street Fighter style thing, but with pro wrestling, you know, where like the wrestlers travel to different areas to fight different wrestlers. And, you know, so I liked that idea, that aspect of it. So I had this idea for Top Gun and his story. Cause you know, his character was like, you know, I'm gonna snort cocaine off of a hooker's ass. And, you know, I do steroids and this and that. So like his stuff was easy. It was like, oh, his stuff's already written. I don't need to think of anything.
Yeah.
So I did a couple of pages. Let me grab them real quick. So I did this. Let me see if.
Yeah.
You know, Winwood, he had a character where it was like Popo Chan or something like that, where it's like a panda bear mask. And so I came up with this design of a guy in a suit or whatever. And then there's Top Gun with his needles,
and his, the bottles,
and his beer bottles. So I had a.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So let me see if I can. Yeah. So there's the motel, and then he's snorting some cocaine, and he gets real happy. It's off of there's the cocaine on the hooker's ass. He does his classic, God damn it, right here. And he gets like a hard Vaden from all the cocaine hitting him, and he throws down his money. And then the next page was going to be a splash page of the hooker on the bed in like just her bra and underwear, but she was wearing like a mascot head. So I was just going to do some like a bear costume head. There was a skit he did at PWG where he had sex with a bear in the bathroom. And so, yeah, so I was going to do a callback to that. So, yeah, that was my idea for a wrestling comic book. So, I don't know. It would still kind of be fun to do. I've had a little bit more free time lately, but I don't know how many people would be interested in reading that book. since me and Top Gun, the guys that I would have had in it, like we've been out of the business for a while or whatever. I'd probably try to incorporate some newer guys or something, but I don't know. It almost wouldn't be as fun because I don't have a connection with them. Like it'd be kind of fun to draw my friends. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, brother. The booker has run out. He's upset because of time. It's time to take this home. All right. So I got some questions here for you. Feel free to digress, of course. There's no hard rules here. What are you got any famous or favorite road stories of yours from traveling in the indie world business?
A couple. I think Top Gun mentioned one of them. There was another time me, Sky, Quicksilver, we were driving up to Sacramento, and we were going to go meet Bret Hart. And me and Sky, that's our guy. So we were really excited, and we were just chopping it up on the road. I was driving, and we ended up driving 45 minutes past our exit because we were just having such a good time talking. So I had to turn around. So 45 minutes in the wrong direction. The one that John mentioned was when we went to Europe, and I had this really cool, it was kind of like a fanny pack, but it was like a fanny pack mixed with a messenger, and it just clipped in the front like this, like a messenger.
I remember
bag.
those. I remember those.
And it was small, and it was kind of like had like a kidney shaped. It was like this. Yeah. So it would kind of wrap right around your side. And so I had everything in it. I had, we had already done a couple of the shows. I think all of the shows. I think we had done all the shows at this point. So I had all my booking money. I had all my merch money, all my merch sales. I had my plane tickets, credit cards, everything. And I would put that on, then I would throw a hoodie on and then a leather jacket, and I would zip both of those up. So if I got pickpocketed, they would never know. Like you would at that time, it wasn't popular, so you wouldn't know my money is right in the middle of my back. So there would be no way for them to get to it. And the one time I like got off guard was we went to an internet cafe, and I took off my jackets because it was warm in there, and I put my messenger bag right on the back of my chair. Internet. 45 minutes later, hey, we got to go. Turn around, bag is gone. We had no clue where it is. It was so it got stolen. It was funny because actually confronted a homeless man not confronted's too big of a word, I think. But he said, "Hey man, hey, have you seen my friend's bag?" And the guy's like, "Oh, get away from me." And that type of thing. So that was the extent of us doing some. So anyway, so someone confronted or talked to this homeless man about the bag, and get away from me. And so that was the extent of it. And yeah, so that was a big one. Luckily John just went with me to the embassy. It was strangely too easy to get back into the United States, to get like a temporary passport. Like John had to just say, "Oh yeah, he is who he says he is," and they're like, "Okay," and then they gave me a brand new passport, and that was the whole thing. I was like, "That's it? Like do we have to do anything else?" And so I had a temporary passport. Quicksilver, and I think Quicksilver and John lent me a couple of bucks, and I had to convince the airlines to give me a new plane ticket. They're like, "Technically, we don't have to give you a new plane ticket. That was your plane ticket." And this was before like e-tickets, like electronic tickets. So it was just like the physical ticket was the thing, and it was fucking gone. And so I just had to beg the lady. I'm like, "I got robbed. I have no money." And the lady just said, "Okay, all right." Like eventually she got me a new ticket. So kind of wild.
In November, I went to China, and in one of because I flew to a couple different airports in China. In one of them, I had like my e-ticket, but I also had like the printed ticket, right? That they give you, when you check in your bags. So I went and they have the little side panel that like comes off, So mine came off, but I didn't think anything of it because in any other airport I've ever been in, they don't really care as long as you have the little barcode they could scan, whatever. So, right. I'm going through, I already went through security, already did everything. And this is like a super busy Chinese airport. And then I get to the thing and he's like, "No." He's like, "Where's the other part of the ticket?" I'm like, "I don't know, fell." He's like, "Nope." And he made me go all the way back, and I had to leave security and go to the front desk again and get another one printed out. I was like, "Are you serious right now?" I was like,
"What the heck, man? That's some bullshit."
I was like, "What's happening?" I'll see. Yeah, that question's not going to work. The other question was, if not wrestling, what would you want to do creatively? I think we already know that.
Yeah. Mimes. I wanted to be a mime.
What's your favorite move or hold that you never used?
Interesting. I don't know that there was a couple of moves that I didn't do enough. Like I was like, I never did enough that enough. I think everything that I wanted to try, I did try. I used to do kind of like a reverse stunner. It's just like a neck breaker, but I would do it exactly like how Austin would set up a stunner. I'd kick him in the lower back and I would jump and do the neck breaker. I did it one time. It's on a couple of highlight videos. Like I did it to Davey. I think it was me and Bosch versus Davey and Super Dragon. I think that was in England. Yeah, I think that was part of our European tour. So that I didn't get to do enough, and I really liked it. If it's something I've given thought to, like just randomly, like, oh, everyone does my finisher. Everyone does the big fat kill now, that spinning hook kick. So I was like, if I came back today, I couldn't even have my finisher because everyone else does it. I mean, I guess I could because apparently everyone can do Canadian destroyers on one show. So, but I like being different. I don't like doing the same thing everyone else is doing. So I was like, oh, if I came back, I could probably use that as a finish, because it's exciting. Like I can hit that on anyone. Like that's, one of the best finishers is someone you can hit on anyone. And that's why I like the big fat kill. I could hit anyone with that. So I'm like that neck breaker I could hit on anyone. So that would be cool. And because I had a bad knee and ankle, I wasn't able to do this. I kind of did like a half corkscrew, not a corkscrew. That's not the right word. It's like a quarter turn muscle buster. So I would hook them up like a muscle buster and I would kind of jump and turn and I would drop to a knee and pull and then like drop them. So it'd have like this, it just looked kind of crazy. So it was different than like Samoa Joe's where he just falls back with you. So it's almost like his is kind of like a double-legged suplex. Yeah. Whereas the muscle buster was like on the cartoon where you see the guy and he would jump and you land on his butt and you'd pull the legs down. Mine was kind of like that, but I would land on one knee. so I just turn, I'd land on one knee, and I have one knee up, and just go boom, and then like they would kind of bounce off my shoulders, and they would kind of fly. So it had this, just this cool look to it. But because my knee was so destroyed, I didn't do it very often. I think I did it twice. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds cool. And you could probably like, I don't know, because I'm not a wrestler, but I feel like you could like give them extra height bouncing off of you, like just with your
100%.
Since you have one knee planted.
Yes, that's how I would do it. I'd give them. It looked more devastating that way because it's all about wrestling. It's all about timing. So it's like when you land, the impact, so their body's crunching, and as their body is naturally going back up, you go up with them and you throw them. So it gives them an extra lift. So it's just like boom, and then your body goes and flies and lands. It's big. It's a good false finish or a good finish if you don't have a lot of stuff in your art. Like I had too much in my arsenal was the problem. So it was just like I keep thinking of stuff, and I still think of stuff to this day. And so that was one that I really liked, but I just couldn't do it. It's my damn knee.
What's the craziest fan interaction you've ever had? We know fans get a little rowdy at wrestling shows. Sometimes they drink too much. Sometimes stuff happens.
I haven't had too crazy of interactions, to be honest with you. Most of my interactions have been pretty cool. Like if they are drunk, they usually want to buy me a beer. So like I like beer, so that's cool with me. Yeah, it's not a bad time. Really, that's it. There honestly, I haven't had that many weird interactions. Maybe if I kept working, but overall it's pretty good. Yeah, I can't complain with the fan interaction. So
besides actually attempting to hurt you, what's the worst thing someone could do when you're working with them in a match?
Besides trying to hurt me?
Yeah.
Accidentally hurting me.
Okay.
Accidentally hurting me is just as bad as the intention. Not just as bad, but it's pretty bad. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I had to amend that question because the first couple episodes of this podcast, I was like, what's the worst thing someone could do? Be like, try to hurt me. So I was like, okay, now I got to kind of amend the question. So yeah.
You should amend it to besides them hurting you.
Yes.
Because accidental or purposefully is no good. Fucking up the finish is pretty big. So it's like watching a movie, man. If you fuck the finish, it's like the whole movie's ruined a bit. You can have the best match in the world, and if you have a flat finish because someone forgot something or whatever, like that can really, it's a whole match. It's the whole point. You being out there is having a good story. And, if you blow the finish, like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's the last thing people remember. So
yeah, 100%. So I would say that. That's like the worst thing you could do. Or farting in my face. Like that'd be pretty bad. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. I was doing I used to do judo when I was like 26. And so I was wrestling and doing judo. I was tagging with Bosch at the time. And so I was taking judo while I was wrestling. So my cardio was insane. I remember having a match with me and Bosch versus B-Boy and Dragon. And there was a 4-man down. And then we were supposed to make our way up. And like, I was so full of energy and ready to go. And so I was up before everyone. I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, oh, my cardio is really good. But anyway, quick diversion back to the judo. I had this really big dude. He was like, I was probably $185 back then. And he was easy 250, something like that. 6 something. And he was I was way better at judo than him, but he was way fatter than me. So he just laid on top of me, like I had him down, and he just rolled on top of me, and I was kind of torquing his body too much, and like I was in the splash zone or whatever.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I was right in there. So yeah, that was pretty bad.
Oh.
Yeah, but besides that, messing up the finish, pretty big deal.
Was there ever a time in the ring that you were legitimately surprised by someone you were working with? Maybe, you heard great things about them and it turns out, oh man, this is terrible working with this guy. Or the other way around, you've heard some like not so good things about someone and you worked with them and you're like, I can't believe how good this guy is. What are people talking about?
Not so much that. There was one time where I was completely surprised in the ring though, like about something that they did that I didn't see coming. It was at a SoCal Pro. which is a San Diego fed, and it was me and Peter Avalon. We were a team, and we were facing off against Todd Chandler. Was a young guy I helped train a little bit, and so me and Peter Avalon, we were tagging, and I had I had Todd Chandler in a rest hold. I had him in a camel clutch, and which was one of my standard rest holds because I could rest a lot in it. And Peter said, "Bring him over here, Scott. I want to spit in his mouth." And it killed me, and I could not stop laughing. And because of what, also another gross thing I was doing at the time, I was fish hooking the guys in the camel clutch. It was just extra messed up, so I thought it would be funny to fish hook him. So I have Todd Chandler in the camel clutch, fish hooked, and Peter drops down. He goes, "Yeah, bring him over here so I could spit in his mouth." And Todd Chandler is in the camel clutch going, he's laughing, and I'm like, like I couldn't hide my face because my, it's like my hands are occupied and just the position. So that killed me. So that was the one time I was legit surprised in the ring, like with something that had happened.
Oh wow. Has a booker ever tried to stiff you on money?
So many have. I was thinking about that the other day. It's kind of ridiculous how many times we've let that happen. Like, it's like, oh, we did work for them. We drove there. We did work, which they requested. We did the work, and then they just didn't pay us, and we just left. Like, it was okay. And it's like, what the fuck is that? What? And that's another thing in wrestling. It's like seriously, promoters should have to pay half up front, half at the end. And like, just dealing with wrestling for so long has really prepared me for art, like doing conventions and stuff like that, like, or doing any kind of commission work. It's like, I always get paid half up front now, if not all up front. At shows specifically, at shows, it's everything up front. Cause I don't know if you're coming back. You want me to draw this thing for you, but we're at a San Diego Comic-Con. I might not see you again. Yeah. So you kind of have to learn from your mistakes. And unfortunately for 10 years, like, I didn't always learn. There was a couple of times where it's like, oh, I just got stiffed by that guy. Like the Rev Pro, the last show, like I didn't get paid for that. And I'm like, what? I was thinking about that. I talk to the Rev Pro guys all the time. And I'm like, why the fuck did I let that guy get away with that? I should have just said, hey, I need my money. I have to drive back to San Diego. It's like, it's not like I was local, So it's like every time I worked, it was 2-hour drive before I got to work. So, and then you think about wrestling, you're not there just for your 15, 20-minute match. You're there hours and hours before the show even starts, hours after the show ends. And, you're getting paid in peanuts. And it's just like, oh, this is stupid. So, so many promoters, so many.
And I don't know how much you were into as far as running PWG and bringing in people, but on the flip side of that, and you don't have to say any names, but was there ever anyone you guys brought in and, now they're there, now they're at the show, where they're like, hey, I know we agreed on this number, but most of the time I actually get paid this much. So if there's any way to even do they ever try to raise the price at all?
I don't think so. I think if that did happen, it was like, if it was a tournament or something and they had to, wrestle multiple matches, I think probably that's when it would have happened. Or if like maybe Bola or something like that, or if someone was booked to go further in the tournament and then they had a crazy flight, like, hey, I got to get out of here early, then someone had to wrestle an extra match. I'd probably say that would be the only time that it happened. I know early on there was an incident with our belts. Like we were using this guy Vanderpyle, Pierce's manager at the time. He had these belts from whatever fed. I think it was from like a TV show or something. He had some belts made for a TV show or something along those lines. So we're using that. That was our first tag belts. And after a couple of shows, he goes, hey, I'm going to sell the belts online unless you guys want to buy them off me. And so we had a show coming up. So we ended up renting the belts from him for like 2 shows before he finally sold them. So
Oh,
that was
wow.
the only time where it was kind of like this sneaky dick move, you know? So yeah.
Well, I had a guy named Jason Styles who wrestled Big Time Wrestling up here. He told a story on the show where Juventud Guerrera straight up stole his belt and left. So, hey, could have been worse.
The juice is loose.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Then he wore it all over Mexican and Japanese television.
Oh, right on. Must have been a very nice belt.
Yeah. It was an original Reggie Parks belt.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah. Let's see. What's the hardest you've laughed at an indie show, or was it the time that he was going to spit in his mouth?
Yeah. When Peter Avalon was going to spit in Todd Chandler's mouth. That is the loudest I've laughed at during a match. Another great laugh I had was at PWG. It was during one of the skits early on. Sorry, my dog's making noise here. It was early on, so we were just trying to think of different skits or whatever, and we were just winging stuff sometimes. And so we were all in the room. A lot of times we'd be all in the room when we were recording stuff. And Rick Knox was on the piano for whatever reason. I can't remember who was interviewing him. A wrestler was interviewing him. And they were like, "Oh, we heard you're a pianist." And he goes, "Oh, yes, I am." And they're like, "Oh, that's great. Is there anything you could play for us?" And then he like looks down, and then he just like, dun. And I call that, and then he's blah, 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 blah. And I fell out of my chair laughing because like I'd known Rick Knox forever, but that'd quite honestly be the funniest thing he had ever said and done. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I didn't know where he was going with that. And like, I was like, does he even know how to play? I don't think he knows how to play the piano. And so he did that. And you might even be able to hear it on camera. Like you could hear a thud, and that's me falling on the ground and like from laughter. It was just so good. I was like, holy shit, that was brilliant.
So you wrestled in a lot of different promotions. You've seen a lot of different workers from different places. What's the worst gimmick you've seen?
I might have to come back to that. I don't know, man. I try to block a lot of this stuff out. Like I try to remember the good stuff and block out the bad stuff. So, I'll come back to you on that one. I'll try to think of something.
And once again, don't have to name names, but any so-called big guys, WWE, WCW, ECW, former guys that you worked on a show with, not necessarily PWG, could be another show, that thought they were bigger than the show, acted like they were bigger than the show, just really were not good to be around, man.
Yeah, there was a guy. I unfortunately I can't name names. I mean, like I feel like I can, but why? I don't need the headache. There's a guy. He's pretty popular. Regular at PWG, and just acted. I wrestled him at another show, and he acted completely different. Like a lot of the guys acted pretty different, but him specifically. And it was just like he was a locker room leader over there or whatever. And we had a match, and it was like there's like a structure to the matches, right? Like, and they were getting the win, and it felt like they had the majority of the falsies, which kind of isn't the formula like for wrestling matches. It's like, well, if you're getting the win, you shouldn't get all the falsies unless you're wrestling jobbers or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't jobbers. So it was just like, seems weird. So, but we were the heels. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, we'll do a cutoff. We'll get them they can get a little bit of shine, and then we'll cut them off right away. And we'll just make the heat longer, because that's the only way the balance of this match is going to happen. If we get the majority of the heat on them, and then we get a couple of falsies, but they get most of the faults and they get the finish. I'm like, that's the only way it's going to balance. But it is what it is. This isn't our home promotion. These guys are being weird here. So we did the match, and where we're supposed to cut off, they called an audible and put the heat on us longer, and knocked me loopy in the process. They did a move where the back of my head hit the top turnbuckle, and I blacked out for a second. I was like, oh, fuck.
Oof.
Yeah. And so that was the beginning of the match, and that wasn't even supposed to happen. It was just like, this isn't you guys aren't even supposed to be doing this right now. Like, we're supposed to be into the heat already. So the match was, so I kind of stiffed them. I stiffed them for the rest of the match because they were fucking me up, and they were fucking up my partner. And I was like, man, these guys work way different here. Okay. And so I just gave it to him back. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, I have control right now, so I'm going to beat the shit out of you. So I did. You're just going to beat the shit out of him. So every chance I got, I would stiff him. And, but not overly. Like, I was just, I was feeding them a couple potatoes. It wasn't like I was trying to knock them out or anything, but it was just like where I normally would pull my punch, I wouldn't pull it. I just give them a little bit more, kicks and all that, a little bit more, not overly, but enough so they know. And then the end of the match happens, and we go to the back, and they chew us out. My partner's concussed. I'm not going to say which partner, because then you can figure out who I'm talking about in what match. So my partner's concussed. I'm a little loopy, but I had stabilized as the match went on. I was fine by the end of it. But my partner was straight up concussed. And they were complaining to me that I was being too stiff and I was being unsafe. And like, I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And yeah. And so that was an incident where I was like, oh, fuck this guy. Like, me and this guy used to be cool. Like, now we're not cool. And plus I heard him say something racist, like the day before. And I was like, oh, okay. You just said that out loud.
All the cards are coming out.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that was straight up racist. And yeah. So I was like, okay. And then, then the shit match happened, and with all the nonsense. And then I get chewed out at the end by both of them. And my partner's standing there in a daze. And it's not my Fed, so I apologize to them. And, like, they were like, look at our faces and whatever. And then I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. Sorry. All right. So whatever. We all go our ways. I go into the bathroom, throwing water on my face. I look at my face. My face is beat the fuck up. I was just as beat up as they were. And they were complaining about their faces. And I'm like, this is crazy. It's like, this is fucking crazy. So I got to see him the next day. It was a 2-shot weekend, same show, same organization. And so we see him the next day, and saying hi to everyone, the bullshit. And so we go around saying hi to everyone. We get to them. Hey man, how you doing? I'm a little worse for wear. How you doing? I tweaked my back during our match. I was like, oh shit, man, I'm sorry. I was like, gosh, hey, when that shit happens. And then, hey, how you doing? It's like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, what? Are you fucking kidding? That's all you have to say to me? I'm all, what do you mean? I'm sorry, what's happening? And he goes, I fucked my back up during the match. And I'm like, okay, like, what are you, okay, I'm sorry. Like, what are you looking for here? Like, I was legit confused as to what the fuck was going on. And then he was like, you were doing this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And I ended up getting hurt and this and that. And the thing he got hurt on had nothing to do with me. Like, it was just something he did in the ring. Like, it's something he does. And he ended up hurting his back doing it. And so he's just full of anger and all of this shit. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on here. Like, what are these people smoking in this Fed? So, it was just one of those fucking shows. And I was just like, oh, fuck this guy. Like, me and this guy used to be super cool. And he's not who he seemed to be, like, at all. So, yeah.
I guess people act differently when you're the one running the Fed, you know what I mean? They're like, like when they need you because you're the one helping run PWG, then they're like, oh, hey man, how's it going? Everything's swell. Then all of a sudden Mr. Dick comes
wild,
out.
Man. And it's just like, and honestly at PWG, I never swung that hammer, it was never, I hated being viewed as one of the promoters. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, don't look at me like that. I'm just one of the boys. Like, I remember a couple of the early shows. Like, I think Daniels had said something to me like you would say to a promoter, like a wrestler would say to a promoter. And I was like, oh, I was like, no. Like, I was like, dude, no. Like, I was like, I'm an owner by name, dude. Don't treat me like that, you know? And I didn't like that. And so as the years went on, I furthered myself like away from being seen as a promoter. It's like, I don't want anyone to think that. For one, I don't help promote. Like I'm not, I almost don't do anything here. Like the first couple of years, yes. I think the first year, I was like kind of in charge of organizing setup. So I would be helping set up the chairs and all that stuff. We had ring crew, so the ring crew would help me in all those things. And then after a while, we just had a full on ring crew, and I was like, I'm not. And I would see guys under me, like undercard guys, locals, not doing shit, and that bothered me. And I'm like, you're on the card because you're our friend. You should know that. Like, you should be lucky. You're lucky you have a spot right now, and you're not helping do shit. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm one of the owners, and I'm over here doing this stuff. I was like, fuck it, I'm not doing it anymore. So at one point, I just stopped. I was like, I'm doing it, and it worked out. Yeah. Like someone else did it. I was like, okay,
there you go.
So yeah.
Any other pranks or embarrassing stories you could think of?
No, man, damn. Like honestly, we're all kind of just nerds about wrestling. Like we would do the shows, we would wrestle our matches, we record our matches, we go watch our matches. We weren't really into the prank stuff that much.
Okay.
We were happy that the ribs, those old school ribs you would hear about, we're very happy that stuff didn't, like people shitting in bags and stuff.
Yeah.
Like no one did that. No one did that stuff. So thank goodness.
Yeah, at some point it's not a joke, you're just being an asshole.
Like, oh, hey, I got you. I shit in your bag. Your gear is worthless now. Yeah. You have to go buy new gear.
Cool.
Ta-da. It's like, you fucking asshole.
High five, right? High five, right?
You got me. That's ruined. Shit. Let's see.
Any just like embarrassing stories?
Embarrassing stories. I got, beyond all of my stuff getting stolen from an internet cafe in London, I got all of my stuff stolen out of my trunk when we were at a Denny's. So we frequently go to Denny's after PWG, just hang out, you know. And I got back to my car, and my car doors were open, my trunk was open, and I was like, oh shit, what happened? They stole, I used to live out of my car. Like I had my laptop, I had my bowling ball, my wrestling gear, my camera. Luckily I was inside a place where I needed my wallet. Sometimes I'd leave my wallet in my car. I actually left my payday in my car in an envelope in the middle console. They did not see it. That was the one thing they didn't steal from me. I used to be a shades fanatic. I used to have like 1,000 shades on my visor. They stole all those. So that was super embarrassing. But we always made the joke. There was a homeless guy out there wearing my singlet, bowling and watching my videos. Another part that sucks about that is we had done some skits. We had done more skits on my camera that we were going to piece together and put on the DVDs. And so those skits are gone. Like, so we're like, oh, that guy's watching a skit where I'm fake taking a shit and he's wearing my gear. So
he's just like watching it, like, what the fuck are these guys doing? Like, he's so confused.
And my gear stunk. It was like they got no, besides my camera being in that bag, they got no value out of stealing that bag.
Who's got the hardest chop?
Roddy's, probably. I would say Roddy's. Dragons is pretty tough too. Yeah, I would say those two guys. Yeah, Roddy's is pretty tough. Roddy's is a little startling too, because if you would chop him, he would slap you in the belly to get extra sound. So he would time it so you would get more sound. But it was just kind of like but you're like, hey man, what the fuck? I hit you. Why am I getting hit right now? You know, and like if you'd never taken one, you never given him one, you weren't expecting it. You're like, why am I getting hit the same? Did I sell that? Am I supposed to sell that? Like, because it just takes you out of the element, because it's not something that usually happens. But Roddy's are pretty rough. Yeah.
All right. I call this the touchy-feely question. What's your pure joy in wrestling? Something that happens either before, during, or after the match. The thing that gives you the goosebumps where you're like, this is why I fucking love this business. This is why I love wrestling.
A big pop from the crowd off of a spot. Like if I hit a spot super clean and it gets a large reaction, it's like one of the best feelings ever. Especially if it's the finish. If I could hit the big fat kill hella clean and the crowd goes ape shit, it's like the best feeling ever. Yeah.
We're pretty much done now, unless you thought of a gimmick that you can think of.
Super Dragon. It's pretty goofy to me. No one takes him seriously. He doesn't take himself seriously. Running around in his pajamas.
There was a pajama-like element to those clothes, for sure.
There was. No, I really can't think of one, but that's always funny. Let's make fun of Super Dragon.
All right, brother, please go ahead and put yourself over. Talk about where people can reach you on social media, of course, Accidental Aliens, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you could find me at Scott Lost pretty much on all platforms, SCOTTLOST, on Twitter, Instagram. I think it even works on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/Scott Lost, I'll pop up. You can pick up my books at accidentalaliens.com. So if you want to see what I'm doing now, my comic books are The Second Shift or Wanderers of Milisanda. Second Shift is a story of people with day jobs, minimum wage day jobs during the day, superheroes at night. And Wanderers of Milisanda is sci-fi fantasy. 1,000 years in the future, we start colonizing other planets, and we come across the planet Milisanda, where the meteor never hit. So dinosaurs of that world survived and evolved. So it's anthropomorphic dinosaurs versus humans. So, and I'm finishing up the second issue of that right now. The art's finished. I'm finishing the lettering for it. And then I'm going to do a Kickstarter. So if you guys are watching this in the month of August, it will more than likely be up the second week of August through the end of August. Yeah. And so you can pick up the first and the second issue on that Kickstarter. It'll be, very reasonable. So any bit helps. So yeah, give that a look. And I think that's it. I think that's all of my gimmicks.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.